I'm sorry, Mira, you can't sit there just yet. I've gotta make the bed. Look at these animals. You can't even make your bed. They just take over everything. Hello, Callie and Adria. I think maybe I should just have the pets in like all of my videos. I lived 4 years without pets. I miss them so much that having them in my life, it's like they're everywhere and they're amazing. For comments on my last video, Adria suggested that I sing at the end of every video. I'm not sure, but we'll see how that goes. So, updates in my life since I last spoke to you. I have my new script up on Facebook for you guys to like read and comment on, as you know. Planned on having that script done a lot earlier, but I kept having to put it off for life stuff. First, it's that we were moving and then unpacking, and I had to put it off for that. And then I had to put it off again for Rumbell Secret Santa, and then I had to put it off again because I got a job. By the way, second update in my life, I got a job. I started the day after my last video, and so much of my life then has been working. But I recently started having more days off, and I don't have to be in a constant state of my feet hurt and I don't like people. Third update in my life, the Craig Ferguson tenure of the Late Late Show ended. Very sad. I'm reading his autobiography now to make up for it. The cover of his autobiography is, of course, him in an American flag styled kilt, because that makes perfect sense. The autobiography is so great, though. It's so funny and it's really well written. And yeah, maybe I did start reading it over reading the other 2 books I'm supposed to be reading. His prose is just a lot easier to read than an anthropological text from 1911, and it's less misogynistic than The Stress of Her Regard by Tim Powers, or at least the first half of The Stress of Her Regard by Tim Powers, because I haven't finished that book, because it's just been really hard to stomach the misogyny. I mean, it's not like straightforward misogyny, he's not literally writing in the book, I hate women, but every single female character is used in ways that are like they're not people in the books. Like, they're either the villains, like all of the villains of The Stress of Her Regard are female so far. And like they literally go after men in like this sort of crazy ex-girlfriend style way. And then if they're not evil, then they're the main character's wives. One who like cheated on him and then died in a fire that he gets blamed for, and the other one that gets murdered on their wedding night. So, or they're his second wife's sister who's like trying to shoot him with a gun, and I'm, fingers crossed that later on in the book she turns out to be a total badass. But so far there's just no sign for that. She's probably going to die, and it's probably going to be sad or not sad for the characters, and really angering for me reading this book, wondering why Percy Shelley is being treated as a more interesting character than Mary Shelley, when Mary Shelley came across a lot more interesting in the prologue. So we'll see. Yeah, Craig Ferguson's autobiography. Craig Ferguson's amazing, and it's really sad that his show is over, but I'm really excited to see what else he's doing next. If you guys haven't seen Craig Ferguson's show, then you should, because you'll know that it's very obviously something that I would like, and hopefully something that you would like. I don't know, my tastes aren't the same as yours because we're not the same person. It's like a show where he interviews people while also talking to a gay skeleton robot, and a horse that's not a real horse but is played by 2 people in a horse costume, and throwing logs into the fire, which is actually a picture of a fire, so the log just hits the picture and it bounces off. It's pretty great. Yeah, and fourth development, the show Miranda, starring Miranda Hart, ended as well. It's quite sad, but it was very happy. At least it was a very happy show. They kind of rushed it a bit at the end, but they still had this really positive message. It became sort of like this big statement at the end of just like, stop hating people that aren't sort of the standard idea of what's good and what's beautiful, and that's just amazing. The 5th update, over there, you can't see it, but actually, no, it's over there now. I forgot, my closet door is open. Over there, I've been plotting out my current novel that I've been writing for a while, but I had to put to the side to work on my script, so now I'm back to the novel and I'm plotting it out. Obviously, I can't actually show you any of those notes, so don't look at those notes. They're just a blur in the background, I'm sure, anyway, but yeah. Today's video, now that I'm getting onto the video part, I'm going to go over the first 2 shelves in my bookcase, which are the texts that are mainly from the 19th century. Most of them are actually the British Romantic era. The first two books I'm going to talk about are the two books that I bought recently that I really shouldn't have because I don't have any room for them on these first two shelves and I have no idea where I'm going to put them. The first is my 9th Frankenstein. I now own 9 copies of Frankenstein. That's a thing. This Frankenstein I had to get because it's from the Penguin horror series and has an introduction by Guillermo del Toro, so that's pretty great. I mean, del Toro plus Mary Shelley equals everything good in the world. Also sort of like really nicely like textured and soft, and it's just got these awesome sort of gothic looking pages. They painted the sides black. It's pretty great. The second one is A Treasury of Classic Poetry. It's a Barnes & Noble collector's book that I got because it has a lot of poets that I do love in it that I already have work for, like Keats or Shelley or Byron, but it also has a lot of poetry by poets that I love that I don't have poetry by, like T.S. Eliot or William Blake. Maybe I have some William Blake in my Age of Romanticism textbook, but it's really nice having his poetry in a really beautiful book. I'm not going to go over every single book on these two bookshelves because there's just way too many, but I'm going to cover a lot of the really key ones that are important to me or beautiful. I mean, they're all important to me. Who am I kidding? But I'm going to cover a lot of them. First is not actually one book, it's a set of books. This is the works of Jane Austen in 10 volumes. It's her complete novels, though. The box opens like this, and then little thing flaps out, and then you can just select the books that you want to read. So like Sense and Sensibility, Volume 2. Then we have this Folio Society edition of Pride and Prejudice, which has these really beautiful colored illustrations. Some more here. Then I have this 1957 limited editions club edition of Sense and Sensibility, which is for 1,268 out of only 1,500 copies printed. Really beautiful. It's in great condition, and it's also illustrated, though not in color like the Pride and Prejudice, but still very lovely. Next is the works of Charles Lamb, aka Gentle-Hearted Charles. This book was published in 1857, so 100 years before the last one that I talked about. A case of Gentle-Hearted Charles that I kind of am pretty sure that some really annoying child colored in his eyes with pencil. Like, you can't see it, but it kind of shines in certain lights the same way that graphite does. I'm a little bit afraid to erase it, but yeah. And there's these two books, which are not by the same publisher, and they're not even the same year, but they're like strangely almost exactly the same. These are books of poetry I bought at a bookstore in Seattle called Horizon Books. I think that was called Horizon Books. And it's around the corner pretty much from Elliott Bay, except it's like in this building you have to go down this ramp to like in a basement, and the bookstore's in a basement, and there's just a lot of books in there, like the shelves, and there's boxes of books in front of the shelves and stacks of books and just books everywhere. So this one's 1001 Gems, which has a weird kind of cloth binding that I don't know what to think of ever. But it's just, 1001 poems. The second one is Favorite Poems, and it's this really beautiful leather binding with these leaves, and I just think it's gorgeous. These next three are not the British Romantics, surprisingly. These first two are both the collector's books from Barnes & Noble. First we have The Complete Sherlock Holmes, which is very beautiful, and I'm sure you've seen plenty of times at Barnes & Noble. I have not read every single one of these stories. I'm actually exactly where that bookmark is. That's where I am. I've read that many. I love Sherlock Holmes. Whenever I read Sherlock Holmes and then I start writing afterward, my language gets all like Arthur Conan Doyle-y, and then I have to like rewrite it later because I'm like, no, that's not how my characters are supposed to be speaking. Then there is the Tales of Mystery and Imagination by Edgar Allan Poe in this really weird, twisty, dark red binding. This is the edition of Tales of Mystery and Imagination that has the Harry Clarke illustrations that are really creepy, but beautiful and imaginative and just creepy. There's a really great one from The Fall of the House of Usher. Then we have a not Barnes & Noble edition that actually predates Barnes & Noble by quite a bit. This is the complete works of Oscar Wilde from 1925. I'm a really big Oscar Wilde fan. The Picture of Dorian Gray is one of my top 3 novels of all time. I love reading it. It makes me really emotional every time I read it because I'm unnaturally attached to Basil Hallward, the painter, and yeah, maybe I did name Basil Hodgson after him a little bit. I love this book. It's a beautiful book. If you haven't read it, you should read it. It's wonderful. This is the rest of his works. I'm also a really big fan of The Importance of Being Earnest. This is the Heritage Club edition of the poems of Percy Shelley. It's really beautiful binding as well with these like butterflies. Percy's very delicate, beautiful, feminine face in that first picture. His eyes are really big. Do you notice that? He's very like unnaturally large eyes. We have this really cool book of British female poets. I'm not exactly sure how old this book is. There's a note in the front that says something about Rome in October 1st, 1860. So maybe 1860. I got the really cool oil coloring on the bindings. I actually learned about the oil recently. Of course, nowadays they would just, use printers and print it on with ink. But apparently back in the day they used to have actually like oil mixed in, I think, with water in different colors, and then they would lay and hold the paper in the oil in order to make that pattern. See the continuation of the oil pattern in here as well. So this book is also not specific to the British Romantic era. This is poets from all throughout England up until 1860, I guess. But a lot of it is the British Romantic era, of course, and a lot of other poets. And I'm always a fan of poets and women, and you put those things together, and it's amazing. The works of Mary Robinson, which is followed by the works of Charlotte Smith. I know, Callie, you memorized a sonnet by Charlotte Smith once. That was pretty cool, and I'm a big fan of Mary Robinson in a lot of ways because her poetry was just kind of bold and awesome for it. And of course we have my 1899 edition of the works of John Keats, love of my life. I don't have any like cool illustrations in it or anything, but I mean there's not even like a picture of John Keats, I don't think, in here at all. But it's also, oh no, there's a picture, look. There's pictures of John Keats in here. There are two of them. Here's the standard one, which I'm sure you've all seen, with him gazing off into the distance. Here's another one of him reading a book. It's so great. It's so great. I don't even know if I'm being like sarcastic right now. This is so great. Now we're down to the last three books. This is Don Juan, or Don Juan by Lord Byron. This is a Heritage Press edition from 1943. It's very beautiful. It's got this really nice, I love calligraphy, and it's got this like amazing bee on the cover. And the writing inside as well is like that. It's also got illustrations. I didn't even know that. I just flipped up onto this page and it was like, bam, an illustration. Even like the regular text. I mean, I don't know if you can see the regular font, but it's really nice. Lastly, we have volumes 1 and 2 of the complete works of Coleridge, or at least poetical works. Biographia Literaria, thankfully, is not in here because that is not only long, but impossible to read. They're from 1908. They're really beautiful, small editions. But what's really interesting about them is that they still have the book plate in them. And I googled this name once, and her name is Barbara de Selencourt. I googled her and I actually got a painting of her as a child online. Yeah, that's it. That is my first 2 bookshelves on my bookcase. It's not all the books on there. Like, for instance, I did not go through all other 8 copies that I have of Frankenstein because that would have taken way too long, and I'm not going to put you guys through that. So that's all for today. I miss both of you guys a lot. I would love to be able to visit you, or if either one of you could visit me or something. I miss you guys. Anyway, bye. Phoenix in the water, I'm a fish that's learned to fly, and I've always been a daughter. Feathers are meant for the sky. Is it a vision or a waking dream? Flood is that music. Do I wake or sleep?